Oh, good morning, everyone. Okay. Oh, there we go. We have volume. It is great to see every single person that is here in the sanctuary, and it is equally delightful to see you wonderful people on Zoom. Thank you so much for adding your energy into this time of worship. I'd like to invite Barb to come up and make an announcement. And as she is going up, I'm going to remind you about the service on Sunday, November the 17th, when the moderator of the United Church of Canada will be here as part of the service. So please mark that on your calendars and try and be present if you possibly can. Over to Barb.
Right. Good morning. On behalf of Hands and Hearts for Africa, I am excited to announce a special free family event the weekend of November the 23rd and 24th. All are welcome. We promise it will be fun, interactive, challenging, as we look at solutions and small changes in our habits to help create a healthier planet. Do you know that in Canada, many of us throw away almost $1,500 worth of usable food every year? To me, that's astonishing. With the cost of food rising, we hope that you will take away from our events one or two ideas to help save food from the bin and help reduce pollution from food waste. Did you also know that the fashion industry is one of the worst polluters in our global water supply? The garment industry not only pollutes our water, but our air with gas emissions from landfill sites overflowing with fabric. Come join the conversation at the Fashion and Fabric table. And have you heard of the World Wildlife Fund alert about palm oil and how palm oil plantations endanger tigers and orangutans? Our forest table invites your questions about this issue. I hope you now have a taste of what our event will offer. A special treat will be a viewing of two unique quilts celebrating the Stephen Lewis Foundation and 20 years of partnership with African communities. Refreshments are included and activities will get you thinking. So mark your calendar for Saturday, November the 23rd from 10 to 4 and Sunday, November 24th, 11:30 to 1 here at RHUC. We hope to see you there.
So lots of things to mark on your calendar, all of which are part of the ministry of Richmond Hill United Church. And worship is one of those things that is a part of our ministry. Hopefully a time that nurtures our spirits and grounds us in who we aspire to be. So as we center ourselves in this time, I invite Barry to share some music. You can see on the communion table that we have our community candles already lit. We have the candle of our faith in Jesus, the radical that teaches us how to live love in this world. And then we have the candle of affirmation. The light draws the circle wide, says that no matter who you love, you are welcome in this place. And then we have the candle of reconciliation, lighting a path to healing and to mending broken covenants. And the candle that celebrates our diversity, highlighting our commitment to become an intercultural church. And so we share our acknowledgements. Long before settler people, my people, journeyed to this land, the Anishinaabeg, the Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit were here, and they received from their elders an understanding of creation and of the mystery that surrounds us that was deep, was rich, and was something to be treasured. Settler people, my people, were deaf to this vision. We tried to force indigenous peoples to be like us, and in so doing, we helped to destroy the vision that made them who they were. And so as we travel this difficult road to repentance, a road of reconciliation, hopefully a road of healing, we commit ourselves to work towards ensuring that we will never again use our power as a church to hurt others with attitudes of cultural and spiritual superiority. So I invite you to join your voices with mine. We are going to share in the call to worship, and everybody begins this call to worship. So we say, we gather to worship, who hears our cries, who meets us on holy ground and calls us to follow and discover what it truly means to live. This is our God. Let us worship. And let us continue in prayer. Inclusive God, with open arms, you welcome us all. No one stands outside the circle of your love. And so here we are, sometimes fragile, oftentimes uncertain, always searching to understand what it means to be called and chosen by you. Through the presence of your Spirit, open our eyes to see you, open our minds to receive your truth, and open our mouths to speak and to sing your praises. Amen. And so we are going to sing. We're going to sing Healer of Our Every Ill. It's a Voices United 619, but the words are on the screen. Today, we are going to continue to explore the theme through other eyes. And I will be sharing something of my experience at the Interfaith Symposium last weekend, where Muslim, Jewish, and Christian women gathered to reflect on the theme of suffering. But first, we're going to take a look at a scene, a Jesus scene, where he wants to know how he was perceived, how his ministry was seen through other eyes, through the eyes of the people that flocked to him to listen to what he had to say, through the eyes of his closest companions, the disciples. And also, this passage lets us see through the eyes of the gospel writer who has been named Matthew. And it shows us how this writer named and saw Jesus. Now, the person who wrote the Gospel of Matthew is unknown. In fact, that particular book, that Gospel, was unnamed for 200 years. Didn't have a name. People knew about it, people were reading it, but it was unnamed. And it was written about 80 years after Jesus died. However, scholars do know that the person who wrote it was very likely to be Jewish, well-versed in the Torah, with a knowledge of Hebrew, but who could also write and speak Greek. So likely a Jewish person that did not live in Jerusalem, but somewhere a ways. So I hope I've got your interest up, because Steve is going to come forward now and he is going to share this ancient story, this story of Jesus.
Good morning. This is from Matthew 16, verses 13 to 20. When Jesus and his disciples were near the town of Caesarea Philippi, he asked them, "What do people say about the Son of Man?" The disciples answered, "Some people say you are John the Baptist, or maybe Elijah, or Jeremiah, or some other prophet." Then Jesus asked, "But who do you say I am?" Simon Peter spoke up, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God."
Thank you. And I'm going to let Steve get down. There we go. Before I invite the choir to come up, they are going to share an anthem, Namaste, and that word means divine spark. The divine spark that is within all of us and connects us one to another. So this is a wonderful introduction to what I am going to share with you. So Mark Hayes wrote this piece of music. Thank you. Thank you. Watch where I'm going. I can be dangerous. It's a good job I moved some of the flowers out of the way. I'd be really making a mess. All right. So I had never been to the Batal Islam Mosque in Vaughan before last weekend. So as I approached in the car, I realized how large it was and that there were a whole slew of different buildings. And it was on an even larger piece of land, and the parking lot, it's ginormous, absolutely humongous. So there was a lot going on at that weekend when I was there. So it was with some relief that I found a parking space. And I thought that I was going to be in for a long walk because it was quite a ways away. But to my surprise, as I got out of the car and turned around, I saw a building that had a big sign on it that said Interfaith Symposium. I was actually steps away from the place that I needed to be. And I had a scarf around my neck because I wasn't quite sure whether I needed to cover my head or not. And as I approached, the door swung open and this smiling face popped her head around and said, "I'm going to be your guide." And she assured me that I didn't need to cover my head as a non-Muslim, but she asked if I would take off my shoes. That would be a good thing. So I did. And I was surprised to learn as I came in that this was the mosque. This was the place of worship, because I thought that this event was going to be held in the community complex. And apparently that is where it has been held in years past. But this year, they were putting on an Islam heritage exhibit that was taking up that other building. So that meant that the Interfaith Symposium was being held in the mosque. And that told me a lot about the support that this event had from that whole faith community. The whole community must have been behind it to have all sorts of different people coming into the mosque. And in fact, the religious leader, His Holiness Hazrat Mizra Masur Ahmud, was giving a presentation. Now, he did it over video. He wasn't actually present because this was a women's event. And he talked about how important it is for us as different faith communities to be interconnected. And he unpacked a little bit about the mission statement of this particular mosque, which is love for all, hatred for none. That is their mission statement. And as I listened to the other presenters representing Judaism and Islam, there were definitely points of connection between us. I think one of the ones that really stood out for me is that we all talked in some form or other about the place of compassion and how important that is in being present with people who are suffering. The other piece was the harm that can be caused by blame when we start to point fingers and blame others. And there was an awareness of what was going on in the world. There was definitely an awareness of what was happening in Israel and Palestine and in many, many other countries. It was not overtly spoken about. It was kind of woven in. Where that came out specifically were in the personal conversations that we all had one with another. And I learned about a mother. 5 of her 7 children live in Israel. Those kind of stories of what is happening in people's lives, where their hurt and pain is and suffering is being held. So, Leah Whitty. Leah Whitty was the person of Jewish faith, and she grounded what she said on the story of Job. You might know that Job's friends insisted that all the terrible things that were happening to him must be because he had done something wrong. And Job was absolutely adamant, no, I have been righteous. I have followed God's laws. These things, these terrible things that are happening to me had nothing to do with the wrong that I have lived. So I thought that is a really fabulous story that is shared. We share those stories with the people of Jewish faith. And one of the things that helped me understand where Leah was coming from, it was kind of a light bulb moment for me, is she described her people as those who argue with God. Those who argue with God. And how that helped me was because something else that she said was that everything comes from God. The good, the bad, the suffering, the joy, everything is grounded in God. So that idea of being a people that argue with God means that everything includes the opportunity to disagree, to negotiate, to try and change God's minds. And there are a whole slew of stories in Hebrew scriptures about that. But it just kind of shifted my perspective a little bit. And Kaula Mangala, representing Islam, offered us an image to begin with. She asked us to imagine that we were with a person who was hooked up to a heart rate monitor and to visualize those spikes and troughs of the beating heart and how this connects to suffering in as much as suffering in its ebb and flow is a part of all of our lives. I thought that was a really helpful image. And she also told of the suffering of the life of the Prophet Muhammad. During the first 8 years of his life, his father died, his mother died, his grandfather died. He went to live with an uncle who was a caravan trader, so he traveled all around with his uncle. That's how he met his wife. And then more suffering happened. His wife died and his uncle died. And as he was trying to live into his calling to bring Allah's message to the people, it was not an easy journey for him. He was persecuted, and there was a whole lot of violence that went on at that time. But what Kala quoted to us is words from the prophet that says, "This day there shall be no upbraiding of you and no reproach." These are words that he said to his enemies. God forgives you, and God is the most merciful. So again, showing mercy, showing compassion. And in the midst of all of that, what did I say? So I was the middle speaker. And one of the things that I found most daunting was the idea that I would probably be perceived as speaking for all Christians. which of course, absolutely not. I mean, even in our community here, I don't speak for all of you. You all engage with your faith differently. Anyway, I had to let that go. That was my thing. I'm going to apologize to June right now. June was there. So she's already heard some of that. So you can just zone out soon, June. So the way that I shared my thoughts and my words, I began with a personal story. And it's one that I have shared with some of you before. It's a time when I was in the mountains of Guatemala, in a tiny village of Santa Rosa. That's where that red pin is. And it's a community of indigenous women. And it was mainly women because many of the men had been killed by the oppressive dictatorship that was in power at the time, or those that were left were working far, far away on the coffee plantations. So it was the women who toured us around their homes, their village, and their experiences of suffering came pouring out. I was shown the places where a husband, a father, a son was killed. And then when we sat down together in the circle, that woman in the center there who is holding a child, she had shared the pain of watching a husband being shot right before her eyes. And then she looked me in the eye and she said, "Tell us about your pain. Tell us about your pain." I was dumbfounded. What could I possibly share? My pain was nothing compared to hers. But I realized I needed to speak, and I hesitantly spoke about the challenges in my marriage at the time. And I knew as soon as I had shared my pain, something shifted immediately in that circle. Because what that amazing woman was asking of me was, let's have a mutual sharing. Let us each give and receive. And that one person's pain is not greater than another's. She was a courageous woman, and I am so sorry I cannot remember your name. I remember you, but not your name. And she taught me as well that when we hold suffering in community, when we hold it in community, it's changed. The pain doesn't go away, but in the sharing, it is lighter, even if it's only for a moment. And then I moved on to some Jesus stories, to a faith perspective. So for me, being Christian means trying to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Jesus, who was a person of Jewish faith, who, along with other great religious teachers and leaders and prophets, lived love in the world and encouraged all of us to do the same. And Jesus lived that love amidst the suffering that was all around him. People with horrific diseases, marginalized from society, despised, downtrodden, the voiceless, which included women and children. And you might remember this story that you've got a picture of it in front of you there, when children were brought to Jesus. And his disciples were doing crowd control, and they were told to go away. But Jesus intervened and said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." And I use the King James Version translation on purpose because it uses that word suffer, which another translation would be, "Let the children come forward, allow the children to come to me." And what Jesus is doing, I think, in this moment is lessening the suffering of those people that have probably been dismissed and silenced all their lives, that have been ignored and pushed away and were about to be again until Jesus said no and brought them into the circle of love and respect. And so in my final segment, I call this Living the Story because it's about what I see is our faith, our call to faith, our call to action. And I was talking about how when we erect barriers between one another that separate us, I think when we do that, we perpetuate suffering in the world. We perpetuate suffering in personal relationships, in communities. And I illustrated that with another Jesus story. You've probably guessed what it is. And the ruler Herod was threatened by rumors that a child who was destined to become king had been born in his territory that he controlled. Fear makes us do terrible things. It often brings forth violence. And that's what happened here. Herod ordered all the male children under the age of 3 to be killed. And so to escape the death threats, Mary and Joseph fled over the border into Egypt and lived as refugees for a few years. So I told that story as an example of a particular kind of suffering. This is my opinion. Suffering that is caused by wrongful actions, both by individuals, groups, or systems. And I'm going to suggest to you that this kind of suffering is avoidable. Then there's the other kind of suffering. Suffering that is part of the cycle of life, which includes natural death, accidents, illnesses, and I would say much of that is unavoidable. It is part of our life's journey. But the first example is where we have an opportunity to make a change. We have a choice. We do not have to act out of fear. And I believe that if we can dismantle some of the barriers that separate us, it might give us an opportunity to reduce some of the suffering, to perhaps stop the violence, the anger, the ways that we protect what is supposedly ours. So from different presentations, it was clear to me that all of those faith expressions, we were all taught to build bridges of peace. And that's why events such as the Interfaith Symposium that I was a part of, that's why the prayers for peace that were held here last November, all of these are excellent opportunities for us to listen to each other, to recognize our commonalities, to learn a little bit more about those different religious expressions, to experience face to face how our faith has shaped us, and to realize that despite our imperfections, God works through each and every one of us, no matter what pathway we follow to God. And I want to bring it right back around to that story that Steve shared with us. This is a paraphrase by Richard Bott. Listen to how he shares this story. They went to Jesus and he asked them, "Who do you say I am?" And they answered, "You are the eschatological manifestation of the ground of our being, the kerygma of where we find meaning in our interpersonal relationships." And Jesus said, "What? Faith doesn't have to be that hard. Life doesn't have to be that difficult. Sometimes we just need to live God's love. Sometimes we just need to live what we believe." Are you ready to sing? So let us sing about all those different strands that help different people come to God. This is a hymn from More Voices in Star and Crescent 159. So this is a time when we offer a number of things. We offer our money to help the ministry of this place, but we also offer what is in our hearts and minds. We offer what we can do to live love in the world. And perhaps you might think about a time when you have learnt from somebody else, maybe a person who was suffering, and what did you learn from that experience? So let us offer all that we have. Our offerings will now be received. seated. And now I am going to invite Jane Wedlock. She is going to lead us in the prayers of the people through Zoom.
Good morning, everyone. Come, let us breathe and pray together in this sacred place. Holy One, we sink into the silence and still our hearts and minds of the restlessness, cares, and concerns we brought with us. May the breath of your Spirit calm us and reassure us again of your constant presence. Journeying God, we are pilgrims with you on a journey, individual and collective. The path is not always straight, the destination not always known. Who is traveling with us? Who will we meet along the way? May our hearts and minds and arms be wide open to the gifts and insights of those who join us on this sacred quest, whether we be on the same or different pathways. In gratitude, we give thanks for the invitation for Karen to participate in the recent Women's Interfaith Symposium, to share perspectives on suffering with other women of different faiths and different pathways, to listen and understand and find common ground, the foundation of relationship. In these times of division and angst and upcoming elections, we are conscious of enormous uncertainty. For polarization, anger, fear of what might happen, and othering of different groups of people, one from another. And yet you are God of love, Creator, you are mystery, and you are spirit, and you are here, and you are within each one of us in all our glorious diversity. May we consciously each day seek and recognize the divine spark in each and every person we encounter. May we be ever curious to learn and grow. May we be kind and generous. May we stand up and speak loudly for inclusion and seek opportunities for dialogue and building understanding and bridges of peace and healing, welcoming new perspectives and insights into our circles of transformation within this faith community and beyond. May we be prepared to let go and be changed. And now in the silence, let us remember those who are most vulnerable in these uncertain times. We lift up the people of Valencia in Spain after the catastrophic flooding, and the women of Afghanistan who have had their rights further curtailed, no longer allowed to read the Quran or hear each other pray. And we remember those closest to us who are struggling. And let us now join together in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Let us join together in the hymn, We Are Pilgrims, and this is a Voices United 595, but we are singing only 4 of the verses 1 and 2, and 4 and 6. I hope that as we move into this week, I am going to carry with me that idea of mutuality, that we need to give and receive. We need to listen to the stories of others, but we also need to share something of ourselves, and that includes our suffering. So let us sing one to another. May the God of peace And I invite you to be seated and receive some closing music from Barry before, if you're able, to come into Centennial Hall for a time of community and fellowship.